Triple Shot Mindset. So I have this thought on my mind, and maybe it comes from being around you guys so much. I mean, we spend together like 40 hours a week.
What a blessing.
More. It's such a blessing. It's absolutely transformative. But for the audience who's not watching visually, I think it's important to mention that you guys are identical twins.
I know where this is going.
You didn't just share the old womb, but you also share all of your DNAs.
Right.
Not to be confused with mayonnaise, which you both love, right?
Hate.
Yeah.
Hate.
So you share all your DNA. You're two totally different people in many ways, but in some ways you're very similar. But how are we going to unite the world of differences? Because we have politically two vastly separate parties. Socially, we have people of a mind that X is the problem, Y is the problem. We have all these binaries, you could say, like complete opposites in this world. And I feel like so often we just see people running up against one another, butting heads, and there's no room for agreement. There's no room for nuance. There's no gray area. Now, in Buddhism, there's this concept called the middle way, which is that it's not an extreme that's the truth. Because if you go far enough to one side, you'll come back around on the other side and you'll be wrong in both instances. But in the middle way is where there's peace. It's where there's infinity. Like if you picture an infinity symbol in your mind, that center between the two poles is considered the infinite truth, like the balancing point. So I'm kind of that mindset to a certain degree. I think that the best truths I've ever found are somewhere in the middle, just speaking for myself. Do you agree? And as identical twins, how do you continue being partners, working together, running a business, multiple businesses together, remaining friends, best friends, and brothers? Like, you must have the secret to peace, world peace, to be able to do that. So care to share with the group?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Compromise. Yes, I see his points. Yes, I see my points. But neither one of them is worthy of a fight, of tearing up our bond, because in the middle is the truth. In the middle is compromise. He may have some great ideas. I won't say no. I may have some great ideas. He may say no. But I think our secret has been that we think things through. We consider the other points, and then we make a decision. And I think that decision always is in the middle. Sometimes I'll have to concede because he's right, and I'll be brave enough to say, you know what, okay, you're right. And same with him. Sometimes he'll just put up a fight, but then when he hears my logic, he says, you know what, you're right. Okay, fine, you're right.
Did you see the number of times I agree with him yesterday?
Yeah. My head almost exploded.
So I think if the world was not as opinionated, not belong. I think everybody wants to belong to a gang, like I said before. You're either Democrat or you're Republican. You're either with us or against us. Like, what the fuck, dude? What do you mean against us? Just because you have a different opinion? Right. All I'm saying is I'm a bit familiar with Buddhism. I speak with my Buddhist employees / friends often about deeper subjects, not just work. And I think everybody says success, like you said, infinity sign, the middle is where everything's balanced. You take that into like a 3D printer and you put it on you cannot hold it unless you just put your finger right in the middle where everything joins. So I think that's the secret. You have to be open, receptive, and not be so hard-headed that you don't see the good stuff.
Some people say compromise, and I've seen relationship coaches. I do this because of our last episode. If you haven't listened to it, go do on coaching. But I've heard relationship coaches say compromise has no place in a compatible relationship, because if you're perfectly compatible, you'll never disagree and everything will be perfect and everyone always gets their way. True? Not true?
Not true. In my opinion, first of all, there's 8 billion people on this planet, 8 billion different types of personalities. There's no two people identical, even me and him. University of Southern California, USC, did a study on us. After years, they said, yeah, we're 98 point something percent identical. Yet, living with us in this office, that we are not 98 point whatever percent identical. We're actually like maybe 60% identical. So for someone to say, oh, there's no room for compromise. Yeah, okay, on the big things. Like if you want babies, you don't want babies. Yeah, you're going to have to change yourself so dramatically that you're always going to look back and say, you know what, I wish I hadn't compromised. But then like, hey, honey, you want steak, or should we go get some chicken nuggets? Dude, you know what? I don't care. Whichever. What do you feel like? Chicken? Oh, okay, fuck, I'll have chicken. On the big things, you don't compromise. On the smaller things, medium, small things, why not?
So like your values are aligned.
I feel like there's death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Oh, yes.
Right? I think every little concession comes with a price. And if you're talking to the wrong person, or you're with the wrong person, they can take every little concession as you being weak and weak and weak, to a point that it becomes expected of them to be the leader of that relationship, and to just dismiss whatever the other person says. In my opinion, even if certain things don't matter, you should have an opinion. If my ex-wife used to ask me, what would you like for lunch or dinner? And it was to say, I want steak, I want hamburgers, I want this and that. After a while, I started talking to her, and she's like, you never ask what I want. I always go with what you want. And I always told her I thought it was trivial. It didn't matter. She's like, oh, well, to me it does. And to you it should also. Like if I ask you, would you rather go to San Diego or Santa Barbara? Don't say whatever you like. Say your opinion. We're not, going to fight over it. You can say, I'd like to go Santa Barbara. I'd like to go San Diego. Let's flip a coin. Because the more you either do this, or the one who doesn't care about the little tiny opinions, eventually it becomes it pushes someone out of the picture, and it brings one into focus. And then that's no longer a compromise. So in my opinion, big or small, you got to have an opinion. If his wife says, do you want chicken nuggets or whatever, you may not care either way, but you can say, I'd rather have chicken nuggets, but I can also do.
Believe me, I've every time I voice my opinion, but I don't fight over the small.
No, I didn't
things.
say fight.
Like,
I didn't
if she
say
says,
fight.
"Oh, last time we had steak, this time can we?"
No, I
have
didn't say
chicken?
fight. You said you let her win the little ones.
No, I never said I let her win.
Whatever you said.
I didn't say win. I said this on. I compromise on the small things, not on the big things. I compromise. It doesn't mean I keep my mouth shut. I do say what I want, but if there's some reason against my opinion that makes sense to me, I'm like, yeah.
The other thing that you were talking about initially, about the yin yang and
Yep.
whatever.
Middle way, infinity, nuance, gray.
That no one's 100% right, no one's 100% wrong. You have to find somewhere in between to agree on, because that's where the truth lies. I feel like in a business, in government, in a relationship, you got to give some weight to the person who understands certain aspects of certain things better. So for example, if I have an accountant and he says, well, you guys are going to be effed because your taxes are going to be high this year, I have him for a reason. He knows about taxes. He knows about finances. So I'm going to trust him with his opinion. Okay. There's no like, oh, well, I don't agree with you. Why should I disagree with an accountant whose job is to look after my finances? I'm not going to tell him I disagree with you. Let's go somewhere in the middle. Let's find a compromise. No, because he is hired to be my accountant. You're hired to be my content creator. He's hired to be my, web designer, right? If he says this website has to be a certain way, fine, do it that way. You've talked to the customer, you've talked to the team in Vietnam. If it has to be this way, do it that way, right? I think a good, happy marriage, government, business, the people that you've brought together, they all have their own strengths. Some of those opinions are not up for, argument, I don't think. If Ken comes in here with financial news, he is a master of it. I'm not going to push back. So I say, yes, we have to find compromise to certain things that we're all deadlocked on. But I think if one of us comes, like let's say if I have a better business sense about certain things, and I say, hey guys, we need to do this and not that, I don't think it's up for a vote. I mean, you guys can vote on it. But if the fact says that, for example, this business model is declining, the numbers are down, then there's no reason to compromise on something like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm with you. So I have a question follow-up. Let's say you have two physicists, and one says that the earth is round, and one says that the earth is flat. And they can both provide you facts, numbers. This actually happens, not to get too political, but with the vaccine. There were doctors who said the vaccine is absolute poison. Mm-hmm. And there are doctors who said the vaccine is life-saving. And they can both whip out peer-reviewed this, peer-reviewed that, research on this. So what happens in a scenario where two experts in the same field are on completely
First of all,
polar
two
opposites?
physicists would never come out and say one's flat, one's round, because there's certain laws of physics, certain, measurements that you can make to prove one case over the other.
You obviously have not watched a flat Earth documentary.
Oh no, those are like, they none of them can talk about seasons. Okay, that's why
the flat earthers?
Flat earthers.
Okay.
Seasons is like something that they walk away from because they cannot, they're like, well, the earth doesn't wobble, but we don't know why there's winter or summer, but there is. Like, trust me. Well, if you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever his name is, he makes a good point for why the earth is round, why the universe is expanding, because it's all based on measurements. Now, if you want to talk about something else.
Not everything is based on measurements, though. Neil deGrasse Tyson said there are no aliens.
Well, he cannot say there are aliens.
So that's the thing. Let's say there were two Neils. One would say there are.
Let's not get lost in the semantics of in the weeds. General concept. Some doctors will not perform cesarean birth because they believe that the baby is at a major disadvantage. Yes. Others will say it's the only way to go with a woman over 40.
Yeah.
What do we do in a situation where two experts are polar opposite sides?
Well, there's data. There's data
on both sides.
There's unbiased data, but the unbiased data, if it comes from a hospital, which is a for-profit entity, who is steering the ship on insurance, on drugs, on everything, you got to look at that. Why are they in business? Like, what does it cost them if they don't have a woman in the operating room? How much is that costing them? How much is it costing their overhead? Mm. And then the person who says, I'll just do it inside your home. Give me $250 for the midwife and she'll just deliver it for you. One is for profit, like mega profit. One is just, charging you for their time. And once you start seeing things like if there's money behind it, if there's an agenda behind it, then I don't trust it.
So let's say another example.
Take another controversial example, abortion.
I thought of that, but then I steered off of it.
Because what my brother is saying is things that are, somebody has a degree in this, somebody doesn't have a degree. So obviously the guy with the degree wins, which makes sense.
Or there's money invested.
There's money,
not money.
No money.
But in abortion, you can say there's money in abortion.
But you can also say if somebody you knew got pregnant, what do you advise them? Right? Do you say get an abortion because XYZ, or do not get an abortion because XYZ? How do you, one person tells them do it, some says don't do it.
But
which one do you pick?
But the person has to have a reason. Like, they come to you, they don't say, I'm pregnant, what should I do? They're not going to come to you with that question. They're going to come say, you know what, I was raped in the alley last week and this is what has happened. And the guy was druggy and he had a crazy eye looking at me. Well, inseminating me, right? Then you have that discussion. No
Okay,
one in their
now,
right
now
head's
let's say
gonna
we are at that point that now somebody has to make a decision. How do you make a decision? Which one is right? Is the middle, somewhere in the middle, maybe that's the right answer. You cannot say 100% you got to do this or 100% you got to do that.
But that would be a person's
It's just an example.
free will.
It's an example to demonstrate that at some point there is some gray area. It's not white, it's not black, and you still have to make a decision. How do you make that decision?
But I think that may not be the best example because that is like something ethically right or wrong.
Last example. Eyewitnesses are known for being unreliable because they can be implanted with suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
In psychology, it's a huge deal. Eyewitness testimony is considered the least valuable of all that you can have. But let's say you're working a case, you're a detective, and someone's murdered on the street. There are no surveillance cameras, womp womp, in that area. And there were 2 eyewitnesses, and they were both at the exact same distance. In fact, maybe they're twins, identical twins who were getting a taco from a food truck. They both turn around, they saw the murder, except one person says that the murderer was a female, and one person swears the murderer was a male. Totally opposite. Complete, only people you have to go off of.
Well, you're not going to compromise at that point. You're not going to compromise. Well, maybe it was a transgender.
So what are you going to do?
You find another piece of evidence.
Correct.
Right.
You take both extreme opinions and you
Trash
disregard both of them, and then you go for something probably in the middle.
In that case, you're right. In that case, right? Because you can't pick and choose your examples, right?
Well,
in the pick and choosing of the example of a hospital with a birth, that again, it was your thing. If you go back and do unbiased research on what did women do prior to like 1940?
Die.
No, they wouldn't. No, not all of them would die, right? They would have home births. In Sweden, they still do home births. In Denmark, they still do home births. And that's more safe than taking someone to the hospital. But once you start seeing that the hospital is a for-profit institution and they have to make $10 million a day just to sustain their, livelihood. Operations. And some of them have shareholders. Of course, every doctor is going to push for cesarean section. Everyone's going to push for you to go in and get your shots. Everyone, because they have to push that narrative. I don't want to get into
Yeah, we don't have to get into the specifics.
But when my ex-wife went to the hospital and told them, I'm pregnant, I want to do a home birth, what do you suggest? The first thing, and you can listen to her podcast on this, the first thing that the lady asked her without doing she didn't even look at my ex-wife. She didn't look at her. She didn't put her hand on her belly. She didn't do anything. No test, nothing. While her head was down typing, she said, the baby's going to die, right? And that was her first word to my ex-wife. That if you opt for a home birth, your baby could die. And when you implant someone with that kind of fear, then the narrative becomes, why did you say that? What does a hospital have to gain to get one more patient in the door? So with those kind of things, I understand there's a middle ground for everything, but you have to exercise your right as a human being to research to see why is a hospital pushing for this? Why is a hospital pushing for vaccines? Why is it pushing for my kid to have 24 vaccines by the time she's 5 years old? Why does a kid need 24 vaccines when me and him only needed 3 when we were growing up, right? And some of these diseases have been eradicated for centuries and they still want to do. So you have to understand what's the reason behind that.
Let's go to another example. One kid says, I want to go to Disneyland. One wants to go to Legoland. What do? Do you compromise? Do you say, hey, this time we'll do this, next time we'll do that?
Of course.
Okay, that's good. So there's compromise.
But compromise in certain things that are like, opinions, I understand.
I think mostly a relationship is a massive amount of opinions about what I feel like eating, what I feel like doing, what's my life goal, how often I want to see my parents. And the other person has the same things too. So to what you asked in the beginning about relationships, I think compromising is very important. You don't compromise the big things, You give your opinion, obviously, on everything, but some things are worth fighting for. Some things you're like, okay, last time I did this, next time you do this. I think that's how things work. There's no perfect match in anything.
But you can't say one time I'll do a C-section, the next time I'll do
No, I said on
homework.
the small things, dude. I said on the small things.
So I think the subjective things, you can find a common ground. On the objective things, you shouldn't. Objective things means I have to pay $3,000 in taxes. That's an objective thing. It's an objective fact. There's no middle ground. Well, I'll just pay $15,000, see what happens. We're not on the streets of New York talking to a hot dog vendor. Hey, give me 3 hot dogs for $2. It's not that kind of give and
in this
take.
business, we never compromise on fact.
Objective
If it's a
things-
fact, we got to do it.
Objective
It doesn't matter what we
things
think.
is an objective thing. You come to the table and say, we need X amount of blogs this month. It's an objective thing. I'm like, well, not 30, let's do 10. Like, what good does that compromise do? Nothing. So my opinion, subjective things, we can compromise. Objective things, we can just take at face value.
And I completely think that both of you are making very valuable points. To yours, I feel like a concern that we're having now in this world is that people can't agree on what's subjective and what's objective because people disagree on science. People disagree on recycling, on climate change, on vaccines, on abortion, on whether we're all going to be under the ocean in 20 years or not. And those are things that maybe 20 years ago you could say, oh, there's only one opinion, so it's objective fact. But now it's like, oh no, there are scientists who will tell you that scientists that will tell you that the earth is flat. Whether or not we can argue about whether or not there's enough data or it's the right data. But the fact of the matter is objective and subjective are totally getting twisted. Yes, you will say 30 blogs, write them, and I can't say like, I did 15, that's 30. In my opinion, that's 30. You're like, no, that's 15. I can count them 1 through 15. But we may start reaching a point in society if we refuse to compromise that people start coming up with processes and methodologies where they can twist what we consider objective even further than it already is. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm just curious for two people who are so different. I think you've evidenced that even in this podcast. What advice do you have for future world where we're even more twisted up than we are now?
My advice is be like me. I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate to have the ability to listen, not with a smirk, or not with like, oh, amen, amen, amen. To listen to both sides. Like the vaccine thing. I listen to both sides. All the people who say you shouldn't, and all the people who say you should. Without any I did not have something in my mind already set that, oh, I'm gonna listen to this one that because it agrees with me. I said I'm gonna listen to both sides. I'm gonna listen to both sides of the abortion thing. I'm gonna listen to both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Not with a smirk, not with, oh, Jesus, you're right. But let me absorb everything they're saying, and then I can make a decision. And I think that's how people have to be. You can't just be on a bandwagon of, oh, I'm an anti-vaxxer, therefore the only things I'll listen to is anti-vax stuff. And that only makes my point stronger, because then you're missing out on the other part. Maybe there's something there for you to learn. So my advice is have an open mind, listen to everything, and then make your own decision.
Neutrality, in a word. Keep it neutral. And you?
I say be like me.
Oh.
Okay, because he said be like me. Be like me and dig deeper than what they tell you. Dig for data. Understand why there's big money in religion, there's big money in pharmaceuticals, there's big money in education. You got to understand the end game, right? And if you dig a little bit deeper, maybe he digs like 5 feet, I dig 6 feet. But I want to see why certain things are being pushed, why certain things are being hidden, why certain things are being eradicated from society. I just want to know why. And there's a reason that YouTube deletes certain videos. There's a reason that Facebook deletes certain. I know there's a lot of hoaxes out there, don't get me wrong, but they're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So Of course, there's compromise. Oh, this doctor says vaccines are good. This doctor says vaccines are bad. I'm not going to listen to two people who are pushing an agenda. I want to find out for myself. So by digging deeper than what these two people are presenting me and understanding the history behind certain things, I can make a better decision. And then it's no longer a compromise because I'm just compromising against my own goodwill and all that stuff. So I don't think, yes, I want to listen to both sides, but then there's more than just two sides in everything, in my opinion.
There's two sides and then there's your side.
No, I think there's a truth. The anti-vaxxer is going to be pushing for, because there's mercury from 30 years ago or so, it's going to, they're going to put a chip in our body. Okay. All right, hot shot, we got you. This guy, it's safe. I've gotten them 10 times, but yet I'm getting sick myself. But, let's just hide that under the rug. You know that both sides are flawed.
Your infinity sign. Somewhere, the truth is in the middle.
That's why you got to go find something. Those are all subjective opinions backed by data, right? Everyone can provide data, but it can be doctored.
To Amanda's point, yes, you can find data on both sides that support something, but you don't know who's being paid for what motive they have until you look at both sides and realistically make up your own decision. Know that the truth is not here, it's not there, it's somewhere in the middle.
Right, that's what I said. And that's what we agree on. So, here you go.
That elbow fucking hurts.
Do you see? That was a moment that I'm glad the cameras captured.
Yes, it will go down in history because it might be the only time we ever see it, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're sitting side by side and you're dropping the knowledge, and we're all better for it.
All right.
Triple Shot Mindset.